Hello, good afternoon almost. It's not good morning anymore. My name is Roberta Rân DUCU. Today I'll be moderating the panel, The Fight for Truth in the Era of Alternative Media and Deepfake Technology. It is my absolute pleasure to moderate this panel together with Ms. Alexia TASOULI from Greece,
Hello.
Mr. Sascha FAHRBACH from Poland,
Hello, good morning.
Mr. IONIșțân from Romania,
Good morning.
and also Mr. Tudor Galos from Romania.
Hello, thank you.
I would like to start this panel with a little bit of backstory. I just had a very nice conversation each morning. My mom calls me, and we had a very nice conversation this morning about the fact that even though she has medium education, since she's not watching anything else besides the news and reading anything besides the news, it's very easy to debate with her any kind of information. And when it comes to my father, who is also of medium education and also very interested in local politics and involved in local politics, because he is constantly on Facebook and watches all kind of reels, he is extremely opinionated on things that are absolutely beyond his actual knowledge. And I was trying to understand why is this happening. Then I started to think about it more, and I'm also thinking about my students, because I'm an assistant professor at the College of Communication and Public Relations in Romania at SNSPA. And my students are also extremely knowledgeable, but they lack vocabulary. In general, they lack patience to make an argument, they lack knowledge to actually argue with something, to have credibility. And I was thinking, why is this happening? Because my students are also very much exposed to social media as my father, and they tend to have the same behavior. And my mom, who is not using social media, is easier to talk to. So, my question for today is, why are these societies so informationally obese? We know for a fact that there's a disturbing mix of online materials containing fake news, disinformation narratives, deepfake advertising campaigns that are very much real and very much affecting our societies and our elections. And there are effects that are very worrisome. There are far-right parties that are gaining traction with radical discourses. We see kids dying because of diseases that are solvable by vaccines for already 50 years ago, but they are dying for those diseases. And there's a Gen Z scoring lower in education than millennials for the first time since the start of these measurements. So, there's a superhero syndrome that I suffer from that says that I need to do something about it. And we, as societies, obviously need to do something about it. And our guest today will help us navigate and, why not, brainstorm some solutions answering the following questions. What role should journalists, educators, and civil society play in strengthening media literacy and critical thinking in the digital age? What concrete tools or technologies, AI detection system, watermarking content, authentication protocols can help identify and counter deepfake content at scale? What practical strategies can be implemented by platforms and public institutions to respond rapidly to viral misinformation during high-stake events, elections, conflicts, crises, etc.? And how can democratic states adapt in order to win the cognitive war against authoritarian states, where decisions are made quickly and implementation mechanisms are often faster? So, for this, our distinguished guest will help us a little bit with a brainstorm. I would start with Ms. Alexia TASOULI. She is an international correspondent accredited in Hellenic Presidency, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and in the Ministry of Defense of Greece. She has worked for more than 20 years in Mega TV station and other media platforms, interviewing politicians, leaders, and covering all the major political events.
Thank you so much, Roberta, and I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me here to this very important forum with so many important speakers. Now, since you start your introduction by commenting about your parents, I would like to say an example about my life and about my children, because I have two children, 20 years old and 18 years old, and they're very good students. They are having good grades at school. But I have a complaint to make. They don't read books at all. They don't take the paper and read the book because they prefer the social media. They prefer to be informed by what's on the mobile phone, on the social media. And I always complain to them why you don't want to read books and you want only to be informed from social media. And the good thing they say that they have learned to be outspoken. They say their mind. They listen to so many opinions from all over the world through the social media, through the mobile phone. So they have learned to be very outspoken, to say their mind, to say what they are thinking very, very easily. Well, during to my age, we didn't have the mobile phone so easily, of course, and we were not trained to be so much outspoken. So to answer to your question, I'm in the media business, as you said, for more than 20 years, and I have covered TV foreign affairs on TV for many, many years. And I have witnessed that year by year, the digital revolution have changed my job, our job in the TV business. Now information and misinformation spread so quickly through algorithms, through social media, through maybe AA and ChatGPT and all the modern things. So our role has become beyond our simply reporting the facts. Now it's more than that. The rapid advancement of social media has tremendously transformed how we create the news, how we create the information, and how to distribute the information. The thing is that the transformation carries profound implications for journalism, and we focus on reevaluating our traditional methods. Now, everything that happens on Twitter, on TikTok, on whatever, it's a major crisis just because it's on the media. So, to my opinion, traditional media should rethink our role, and because we are struggling for the loss of audience, for the revenue maybe, and for attention. We as journalists, I think, we're facing some other challenges. Maybe our profession is now in a crisis. Our industry maybe is in a crisis. So my short answer to your question is that we should think that now journalism is 24/7, and we should have more focus on highly personalized information experience and navigate the balance between the rapid technological change and our core professional ethics. And we should improve media literacy and be more transparent about our reporting process and showing how we gather information and put our sources on our social media platform. That's what I think.
Thank you so much. I would like to ask Mr. Sascha FAHRBACH, lecturer at Kosmiski University, specializing in communication and cybersecurity. He is an international media expert with experience covering global affairs, technology, and businesses. He has worked in cybersecurity sector for over 8 years, particularly in the privileged access management space. He has helped clients across multiple industries navigating media, strategic communication, and digital risk in an increasingly complex information environment.
Sounds impressive, right? Also, one thing, I wear a different hat as well. I've been also in the media as a journalist as well, and TV host to add to that. Thank you again for having me. Once again, it's always a pleasure to be here, my second time at this wonderful venue. And I think it's also the discussions we can after this, which I think are really key. So just a flavor. But I'll also start with a little anecdote, if I may. You mentioned your mother, your children. I'll bring it back to my mother. You said as well about how your kids need to be outspoken, right? We live in that age. I'd say that, in my experience at least, some people, my mother, over 70, is also quite outspoken. Every thought needs to be shared, and therefore every reel, every Facebook, everything needs to be constantly shared. And I think that's one of the problems, this double-edged sword of the society we live in, right? The tools that we have available, it's meant to be shared as fast as possible. But I think at the core of that, what I've seen as well with my students, a bright bunch, they're at least willing to step forward to say, well, we don't know how to do that really. We're not really good at going through what is the medium, explain to them how sources work, right? Really basic stuff. Different types of, and as you said, the first thing they go to is some kind of reel. It's also because information has become so branded, right? Everyone who has a smartphone is an influencer, a journalist, a model, you name it, right? It's this almost, I will say controversially, a little bit of self-entitlement, right? Everyone has the opinion and that's it. How do we fix it? That's not an easy answer. But I think at the core, it's very much about trust, right? People don't trust anymore. Everyone has an opinion, but how do we reestablish that? Even in my generation, we grew up with the very beginnings of social media. So I still remember very much buying newspapers and reading books, although it's harder and harder as well. But I think in terms of how we do all that, I see it in my experience for students to, give them the training, give them the exposure. That's a great step one. It's also the social media platforms, right, that need to be held accountable. I mean, it's profit-driven as well, so they're not going to suddenly change. And we have all these wonderful reforms and plans from the European Commission and the European Union. DSA, fantastic. That took over 10 years to get off the ground. It's still not really fully understood. I remember GDPR. The Americans, blocked the IP addresses because they didn't want to deal with it initially. I mean, that's changed as well. So it's a multi-pronged approach. How do we fix it? I don't know. I think in the small measure is giving everyone tools to do it better. That starts, you've had experience with your students, not even at university, even earlier, right? I would class it, without sounding cliche, a kind of national resilience in a way, right? Where this technology meets media, how do we build back trust? And I think also a personal thing, right? It can't just come from top down, it has to go from bottom up in the middle. So there's different facets, but I think reestablishing trust, and I think also holding some of these companies accountable. What is it? 75% of our digital infrastructure comes from the Americans. So there's no European alternative. I think there won't be. That's another discussion. But just briefly on all that, I think what I've found, at least in my discussions, when I have interviews, when I've had interviews, I think if you really make it fair, it's also the tone of language. A lot of it is adversarial, that sells well, those are good reels, but if you have really, I think, decent conversation, you listen, you ask interesting questions, you fact check, but all those things done at a certain, I think, high level, that's one small measure. There's some great interviews in the past that I've learned and grew up with, but that's my own personal story. But I think trust needs to be somehow reestablished from different angles. What exactly that process is, I know we'll talk about it more. I think you mentioned watermarking as well, so that's an interesting concept. But it's a tough one, but step-by-step trust, but also involving it from a whole society level, from training, from how, but also holding the media companies to account. That's a difficult one. Big tech is a beast. But that would be my little foray into it. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. We will continue with Mr. Ioniță, journalist and editor-in-chief of Historia magazine, part of Adevărul newspaper media holding group. He started journalism career early in the 90s after the fall of communism in Romania and is now senior editor and columnist for Adevărul newspaper, covering politics, European affairs, security and international topics. Later, he joined television to host interviews and debate shows on current affairs and international politics.
Thank you very much. Good morning. First, I believe we have to understand our society, what is happening, and it's not easy. It's very difficult. Even now we try to understand what happened in Romania in 2024, when the Romanian society was on the edge. And this is unique because millions of Romanians have voted for an unknown person. A guy they didn't know nothing about, only his name. So it is unique what it happened in Romania, and then we the societies try to recover after this political shock. And of course, as we speak, every one of us in this room and in this world is a target. If we read our phone now, we are a target. Social platforms are used as mass disruption weapons. It disrupts our society. And the effect of this, we saw 10 years ago for the first time at large scale, and I'm talking about Cambridge Analytica and Brexit. And we experienced here in Romania in 2024. And what kind of society we have in Romania in this moment? And I'm speaking, taking into account social research in the last years. And what's the picture? We have more Romania, more parts of the Romanian society, totally different, with a different perception about realities. And one of them is rural and small towns, with lower incomes, with lower education levels, lower economic opportunities, more radical and nationalistic views and options, anti-European sentiments, more favorability for Russia, beliefs against Ukraine. This is a part, almost half of the population in this moment. The second part, urban, big cities, higher incomes, better education, more economic opportunities. Pro-European or pro-Western, as you like it. Rule of law, civil rights, democracy, support of Ukraine, and so on. Support for NATO. The sentiment in the first category is hatred. Hatred towards the others, more prosperous. Hatred against the foreigners. They consider Romania as a colony ruled by political servants as foreigners who are in fact running the country. This is the reason of this slogan, "We are not selling our country." In the second category, the sentiment is fear. The fear they could lose civil rights, freedom, democracy, prosperity. The freedom we can lose Europe. There are no bridges between this part of the society. No communication, no dialogue. It's a wall between us and a lot of hatred. There is also a third category, the diaspora, millions of people. We don't know how many there are, 3, 4, 5 millions. There the sentiment is frustration. It's frustration because they left the country and they blame this. It's not a personal decision for them. It's, they think they were forced to leave Romania by the politicians. So this is the explanation why in the Romanians living in Europe, the vote for the radical anti-European parties in the last election in some countries as Germany was 70% against their way of life in Europe. They voted for nationalistic, radical, anti-European parties, which is unique also. So, what's the picture? We have a less resilient society, a more vulnerable society, deep polarization, no dialogue, no trust. Whatever I have to say it, there is a majority in Romania that defends democracy at all cost, but this majority is under pressure, and this pressure is increasing and increasing. The feeling of this category is they are abandoned and they are left alone to fight along for their values and their goals. What's your feeling?
Thank you so much. Before our discussions, we will stop by Tudor Galos as well. Tudor Galos stands as a preeminent figure at the intersection of data privacy and emerging technologies, with a career spanning over 2 decades in management, sales, and marketing. He is a certified privacy expert as well as a leader for AI governance and digital ethics. His unique growth hacking mindset, combined with a rigorous commitment to human-centric innovation, ensures that digital transformation serves as a bridge for building sustainable trust between organizations and their users.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start first with a question to the audience. How many of you actually fell for a fake news? Be courageous. I did. I shamefully did, and not once, several times. Because the news was written in such a way, it sounded too good. It sounded too good. And if you remember, many Romanian outlets fell for a news when a local famous Manele singer, Florin Salam, was supposed to be dead. Of course he wasn't. He made this actually live video just when the major outlets in Romania were saying, oh yes, he's dead, he died. Because many major newsletters want to be the first to announce something like this. And many of them forget to check, double check, and triple check the news. Also, yesterday I saw a great piece of fake news. Something which was rolling again on the social media of a lady in UK who was in a coma for 20 days, and in her dream she spent like 10 years or 13 years having 3 kids. And if you were actually searching for this news, you would find only one reference on MSN, which was taking it from Daily Mail, who erased the article. Clearly this was fake news, but nobody cared. It sounded so good. And people were discussing and discussing and discussing and discussing. And that's one of the issues that social media amplified, you know, in the past almost 20 years, I think. Yes, in the past 20 years, because social media is not something new. High five, those who are older remember high five. And Umberto Eco, you know, the famous writer, nailed it in terms of social media. It's about legions of idiots who used to discuss things at the bar. Now they have the same, they are seen as virtuous as the speaker in the whole of the parliament. And this is not okay. The problem is also how social media evolves. If you remember at the beginning of Facebook, all the content was chronologically delivered, okay? Then the algorithm appeared. The algorithm started feeding you with what they thought you need. In fact, let me translate what this means for you. What makes you stay in the platform. When you have a hate reaction to an article, this means that this article will be disseminated even further as recommended lecture. These days, I'm receiving a lot of recommended lectures of content which is completely contrary to my political and libertarian values, really extremist and really bad content, how should I say it, really, really bad. And this is because they want me to react with hate to that, to read that piece, and to debate it. It's simply, it's a simple business in the end, because Meta, for example, or TikTok Limited or ByteDance in China, they want to keep you in the platform so they can serve you content and, of course, ads and things like this. But by doing so, the algorithm learned to exploit what is called transient vulnerabilities or permanent vulnerabilities. Transient vulnerability is when you feel yourself a little bit depressed due to something, or when you are tired, or as a lady when you have a postpartum experience, and things like this. So they know, and the algorithm knows how to exploit this. This is purely AI. This is how AI works. Now, the question is, how can you control fake news? And this is a debate we are having a lot with other scholars in Western Europe, specifically University of Maastricht, with former judges at the European Court of Justice and European Court of Human Rights. And the discussion is, how do you think fake news is delivering harm to people? Just to give you another example. Yesterday I saw part of this content that was disseminated to me. There is a lady in a forum, I think in Arad or something, who is delivering outrageous content, clearly fake as hell. I mean, if you have more than 2 neurons in your head, you know that content is fake. Discussing chemtrails, discussing everything. And it's so funny. I mean, in the end, you laugh. But 30% of those reactions and comments are not laugh. They actually believe this. They actually believe conspiracies, but it's outrageous. I mean, everybody is laughing, you know, except 30% of people. How do you measure the harm there? How can you, in legal courts, how can you address such a content? Because that person might say, hey, you are infringing on my freedom of speech. I wanted to make sarcasm and irony and disseminate such content related to sarcasm and irony, and suddenly you're cutting my right to be funny. And that's a long discussion. So creating the tools and the platforms to identify fake content is a challenge, and it will be subject to really long discussions as it is right now, because often you might mark content which is not fake, which is simple, let's say funny, as fake and dangerous contents, and at the same time you need to protect vulnerable people. So it's a long discussion.
Thank you so much. I noted here something about trusting, and Mr. Galos just opened the floor to even more than that. Beyond trusting one information is the inability to identify the irony behind an information, because indeed, maybe you are trying to make funny content that contains fake information, but for those 30% of people, that becomes harmful information. So people are trusting AI, but they are not trusting authorities, they are not trusting other people, and they don't have the ability to understand irony, to figure out that some content contains irony. What do we do? How is journalism trying to tackle this, and how are the rest of us in academia going to solve this? What are your ideas?
First of all, I'm glad that Sascha mentioned that he raised the question, how can we fix it? You use the word fix it. That means that we all agree that social media, the overuse of social media might in the end, in the long run, needs to be fixed. And I also glad that Ion mentioned some very interesting political remarks regarding the use of social media. And of course, Tudor reminded us all that we all have been victims once in our lives, at least, from fake news. And I'm sure if Roberta Eco was still alive, he would be very critical about the overuse of social media. Now, to answer your question, Roberta, I think, to my point of view, people often trust local journalists. They often trust community leaders. They trust more doctors, election officials, regional organization, more than they trust the big national institution or platforms. That means that rapid response systems work better than when corrections come from trusted intermediaries, not just centralized authorities. So having said that, we have a problem, we have something to solve about, because the several concrete technologies are emerging to identify counter deepfakes at scale, but experts say, and increasingly point out and agree, that no single solution is sufficient. We cannot have just one single solution. What can we do? Because the problem is that if we combine AI detection, provenance tracking, or rapid response coordination, we have to combine all these kind of media platforms. To my opinion, the solution would be create real-time misinformation response centers, to have the governments and the election commissions and platforms to operate on 24/7 monitoring teams, to have multinational, multilinguistic analysts, and of course to have rapid verification pipelines. The answer to your question is to be very fast, to be very rapid, in order to respond at real time the fake news and the crisis that creates.
Thank you.
In fact, the problem is not easy to solve, and I think the solution, the general solution, is education. But this takes time, a lot of time. If you start to educate our younger generation now, in 20 years, we will measure a result. I hope a positive one, but we do not have the time. And the problem is, it's not about irony or sarcasm or whatever. It's about national security. We are speaking about national security. You can undermine a state without a war, a classic war. You do not have to send tanks or bombers. You can organize a very effective campaign, disinformation, misinformation, spreading conspiracy theories, and you can have a result. You can have a country without a bullet, without firing a bullet, a single one. This is the problem. And we see this happening in Romania. Look how a part of the population is seeing what is happening in the war near our borders. Confusion. Who is the aggressor? Who is the victim? And the victim is aggression, and this is amazing. And I saw a last research, social research. It was published 2 days ago. It's very fresh. It's about Moldova, the Republic of Moldova. And the Republic of Moldova, it is an example for us. They are very successful countering Russian disinformation. Very good. They are very good. A very small country, is not in NATO, with no resources, no money, and they are very effective in doing this. And they stop a vast network trying to influence their voters in their last elections with a lot of money. But in the Romanian pool, it was a question. Do you think Romanians living in Moldova, in the Republic of Moldova, the Republic of Moldova citizens, are Romanians speaking Romanian language, or do you think they are different people speaking a different language? And for our national identity, this is no question. 100% of the Romanians know the citizens living in the Republic of Moldova are the same with us. We speak the same language and history, whatever, culture. But surprisingly, after years and years of disinformation, 25 of the people in this pool said it's a different people. They speak a different language. And this is unbelievable for a Romanian. To think 25 of us believe Russian narrative, the Moldovans are different. And they have a different history, a different culture, and they speak a different language, which is unbelievable for all the Romanians, because if you hear the Republic of Moldova citizens speaking, it's clear it's the same language as we speak between us. So, unbelievable, but it works. How to counter this? How to counter this attack undermining the identity, not the history, not the political, the identity of our people. And we have the answer, education. One more thing, more practically. We need institutions, in Europe we have institution, not for censorship. We are living in a democracy. We can allow censorship. But what can we do? As in a weather forecast, you have to have an institution as a weather forecast to see what is happening in internet, to see far away, and to see a hurricane coming, a storm coming. Yes? And you can take measure how? Informing correctly the population. What's about the virus? What's about the pandemic? What's about the war? And you have to inform 24 hours a day in advance. In advance. The storm is here. The storm, you are living in the storm. But we have to forecast the new campaigns, disinformation campaigns coming to us.
I want to jump in on what you've just said as well, taking over a country, right, without even firing a bullet.
Yeah.
And I want to add a bit of, let's say, positivity here. I think it's also the nature of the dialogue. A lot of this communication is very aggressive. We talk about hybrid warfare. We talk about arsenal of democracy. I think it's in wording. But really quickly, what you said about Brexit as well, I think it's also not just the fault that we have disinformation campaigns and misinformation, etc., but it's also, and this is a bit critical, if you'll allow me, the failure of the good guys, if we can call them, the European Union, our own politicians, also really to speak and explain, to communicate really on the same level as those creating these campaigns of disinformation. I think the one thing you can say about a lot of these far-right and radical forms is they communicate all the time. I mean, they may not necessarily say the correct thing all the time, but if we study communications, as some of us here do, that is a lesson in of itself. Really quickly also to Germany, as you said, the rise of the far right. I've been there recently covering this, talking to people on the ground. And I think also the way that at least some German media view people who follow AfD, they don't talk to them. They put them off in a bag. And these are radical people, but the numbers keep growing. I see a different approach. I think if you have conversations with a lot of these people directly, eye to eye, what are their problems? This is what politics should be. I think if you talk with them for a while, you can rehabilitate those people. I think they've not lost in that sense. They've just been disappointed, and I think we have to change that as well. Looking also at some good examples on how we do this, you mentioned Russia as well in Moldova. I mean, the immensity, as many of us probably know, the immensity and scale of what Russia can do officially and unofficially, the kind of immense funding that they've pushed into not just this kind of campaign here around the world. We haven't even discussed what they're doing in Africa, right, where they're winning, quote unquote, with RT, Sputnik, offices blooming. We're here very happy that we're kind of, let's say, almost on equal terms winning the battle. If we go to Africa, Western institutions, they're losing. They're losing that battle. One quick example of Lithuania, which I like very much. They have had success already in the past, also NATO frontline state, in trying to shut down a lot of these troll farms. This goes back a few years. They passed legislation. They tried to push that through also the European Parliament. I don't know where it is right now, but that's a win for the good guys, right? They have excellent people there, these elves, right, who we never talk about. We talk about bot farms, troll farms, but there's a lot of good guys that are really trying to push against all this narrative. You also said we don't have much time, which is also true, but at the same time, we must also deal with what we have, and I think there are certain structures we're not lost. It takes several areas of society, as you've pointed out to. And one thing maybe, in terms of, for one, in Austria, we have military service. That's still something we have to do. In some countries, that's coming back. Perhaps, if we need a radical approach, well, I'm personally in favor of military service, but that's a different discussion. But maybe a kind of service for the country, national, as we've kind of talked about, young people who have to be part of something, to be aware, to really force them, because they ain't going to do it, right? You have kids, they're not going to do it on their own, to push them into something. Maybe a program like that, where you put people together, young people from around Europe, and look, here's what news looks like, here's the truth, here's how to spot this. Maybe something like that, potentially, right? Getting everyone involved from the ground up. So those are some thoughts I have. But I want to also keep a bit of the optimism, because I think if we just say, okay, this is a lost battle, we're too late, in 20 years things will change, That's maybe my Americana. We want to be a little bit more optimistic than that, right? So,
We have solutions, and one of these you mentioned before.
Just to add, we have the tools, I agree. So basically, I'll give some concrete examples. I mean, TikTok has been brought up to the Irish regulator in terms of Digital Services Act breach and numerous other GDPR breaches. However, the institutions need to be more courageous in this space. Let me explain you something about GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. Most of the social media networks are breaching GDPR on a large scale. You've seen fines on Meta, you've seen fines on LinkedIn, you've seen fines on TikTok. One of the things that the supervisory authority can do in a country is completely block the access of the social media to the country. And I'm not kidding. They have this in the law. If you have repeated breaches of the law, you can actually block their IPs from access to the country. Yeah, of course, there are VPNs, but how many people who believe in fake news have VPNs? So it's a simple equation. So you have the tools, but the supervisory authorities need to be more courageous in taking such bold actions. No one in Europe, in the European Union, did use this action yet, and I'm focusing on yet. Also in terms of news, it's a big problem related to journalists because they rely too much on social media and on search engine optimization. And that's a problem because media became dependent to social media. In terms of, for example, in Australia, where Facebook threatened to pull out and they delisted some news sites, they saw drops up to 80 to 90% in traffic. And they were outraged. They said, oh, come on, get back. No, actually, you need to build your own and operated assets and reinvent the press in order to avoid becoming, again, redependent or dependent to social media. Because that's a problem. You actually fall in the trap of delivering content which is not necessarily good for readers. I remember that one of the most important guys in the press, his sister launched a website, and he asked, do you have runes on your website? I said, what? Do you have horoscope? Because on our news website, those are the most visited pages, runes and horoscope. Well, that's a problem. Okay, so you need to recalibrate this and re-win the content war. Otherwise, social media will use their algorithms to disseminate only the content that outrages people, not necessarily the true content. In Canada and US, they started a movement called Ground News. You can check it, Ground News it's called. They're taking different articles from the American outlets, news outlets, and categorizing them in terms of how much, they're not saying this is correct or incorrect. They say this leans towards the left, this leans toward the right, this is more center balanced. And they are bringing also other interpretation on the same facts. So you have like 5 to 6 news pieces on the same facts, all of them centered and calibrated in terms of left, right, and center. That might be a good approach. But actually, the best approach would be for the social media to stop the algorithm and get back to the chronological content. That will kill fake news instantly.
Just a word, I wish to continue this idea. A big confusion between social platforms, social media, and media. Journalism and influencer. It's totally different. And if you believe an influencer...
But who is more powerful, journalist or an influencer?
Or an influencer. If not a journalist, is an influencer too. So, a journalist, what's his profession? To check the facts. What an influencer is doing? Trying to influence you. Let's believe the words. Let's go into the basics. Influence. So he tries to influence you, and he makes money with this. This is the reality. Why to believe him? I don't know. It's probably something in our psychology, trying to believe an unknown person. Instead to believe a professional who is checking facts. This is boring, probably. And I saw this in my family with a relative of mine. He was trying to buy some pills on internet. And I said, oh, go to the pharmacy and buy the pills. It's everywhere. No, I'm going to buy this because an influencer said me this is will solve all my problems. All your problems, all my health problems will be solved with one pills. How much it is? 500 euros. Okay, pay it for this, if you want to pay.
The problem is that the influencer says his opinion or her opinion. Journalists should focus on the facts, should read, and it's boring. Being based on the facts is very boring. But an influencer, we see him on TikTok, for example, on his opinion, what he's wearing, what he can sell the cosmetics that he wants to the makeup on, and that's very dangerous because he has more power, as I said, to the regarding the compared to the journalist. I want to also say about the security. You mentioned security before, and you also mentioned about Russia. See about the developments in the Middle East and about how the US president uses the social media and AI every morning. I see him every morning. He posts on his internet, on his social media, his opinion through AI cartoons or whatever, trying to influence the war that's happening in Iran. I'm not judging if it's wrong, it's right, but I'm saying that he does that every morning, and that's strategy and that's policy.
Just also really quick, can I maybe, we have this distinction, influencer and journalist, can we have a journalist influencer? That probably you could, but I think, again, you can probably and must make news and facts more entertaining. Now that doesn't mean that they're wrong, right? But I think it's also because of entertainment, right? And the media has changed, and you're absolutely right. Dare I say some of the reports that I've seen that it's because the way it's packaged. I think there's a great Bloomberg guy who does this really, really well. It's just interesting, it's all factual, but he just does it in a more entertaining sort of way. So I think we need to kind of have that on there. And also, and we talk about trust, I think also what kind of has to come into that is also likability, right? But that's also on how it's actually conveyed. So that's tough. And look, you give one bad example of Trump. Let's give a good example. Way back in the 30s, during the war with Roosevelt, with those radio addresses, right? This was also totally new media at the time, but it was also a president talking realistically and honestly to the population. I think perhaps, but I think also things have just become. They've lost respect, right? I mean, we don't have to go into it that far with Trump, but that's also gone, right? It's not just the trust, it's just respect and decency, how communication is handled by many politicians and influencers and journalists. So it's an uphill battle, but I think it can be done.
Just as a remark, the first party who used radio as propaganda very successfully was the Nazi party in the 30s.
I would very much like to continue our discussion because I think we can have a whole conference over this topic, honestly, not only one panel. What I noted here from our discussion is that leadership stands out as a resolution and as a resource to solve this kind of crisis, because we can admit that this fake news, deepfake advertising, misinformation, everything that's happening due to AI and enhanced by AI could be solved by a little bit of more bold leadership. And bold leadership both as taking responsibility and also holding someone responsible for what's happening. We need stronger institutions, obviously. We need specialized institutions that will take also responsibility and will also implement the law, because we don't lack laws. We have laws. We are shy to implement them. Enforce them, exactly. And yeah, education, a lot of education. And you mentioned something, and it popped into my mind right away, about the journalist that is also an influencer, or the influencer that becomes sort of a journalist. There are a lot of news anchors that are not the news anchors that we see on TV, but they are news anchors online, influencers that are only delivering information. They are extremely followed. You have no idea how many millions of viewers they have online worldwide. And I remember that I noticed one of those and I started to follow him because he was invited to Munich Security Conference. So maybe that's also. For the last minute that we have, if you have any kind of information that you want to add here.
Just as a small advice maybe for everybody, protect yourselves. If something sounds too good to be true, it's too good to be true.
I think it's an
Exercise
excellent.
common sense.
Maybe if it's a question for the audience.
Of course. 2 questions even. 3 questions.
Hi. Can you hear me? Yeah. My name is Andreea Purvu, and I am the assistant of the German military attaché here in Bucharest. And I also study, as my master study, public communication in the field of security and defense at the University for Security here in Bucharest. And I have a question, and that is, I have a very similar story to what Ms. RânDUCU a bit earlier talked about. And the thing is, my mother, for example, she's very receptive to switching sides or debating different types of information and everything. Problem is, she's receptive to both sides. And yeah, and my father is very stubborn. And yeah, and so whenever I go home, and I don't know if like what your experience is with this type of people, but they like to engage in debates, and they provoke you to debates. And I stand no chance. I stand no chance because first, as Ms. RânDUCU talked about, we talk about an inability of them to discern between fake news and accurate news, but we also talk about an unwillingness to discern between them. And I observed that fake news, it plays and attacks on multiple battlefields, and and those are, they tickle the ego. We're talking about promotion in on the ego side. They also take advantage, of course, of your frustrations and depression, as someone said. But I observed that whatever I say, it doesn't matter what I say, I am wrong. And although he knows what I studied and where I work and what type of data I'm working with, he refuses somehow to accept that. And I'm asking myself, before we manage to fix these problems on a state level, or on a European Union level, what can we do ourselves in order to cover a small part of society to fight back these types of problems with our families, with our friends, and with the people that are falling easier victims to such processes. Thank you very much.
You can't choose your family, but you can choose your friends.
But I jump in rehabilitation, like I said earlier, right? It's also how you communicate with them, right? So no one likes to be just rejected and said, oh, you're totally wrong. But just acknowledge, but then, like in my experience with my mother, kind of just slip in the facts very gently. You have a big battle, you need a lot of patience and love, but I think acknowledging and then rehabilitating in that sort of sense, that's a tough one.
Yeah, thanks very much. Stuart Skeets, I'm ex-military, served as the Deputy Commander at JFC Brunsum, and now work for a variety of organisations, including an information operations and an agentic AI organisation. Just very quickly, firstly, can I thank the panel for an excellent discussion, really, really interesting, and completely subscribed to the issue that this is a national security. I mean, the most fun fact for the last few months is that when Iran shut down its internet in February, the number of sites advocating for Scottish independence reduced by 25% the next day. Anyway, you probably all know that. My question, however, is just taking on from the previous questioner, actually, which is an interesting one, which is whether there is a, I mean, you're much closer to the younger generation than I am, frankly, and what the new generation, which has gone through an entire, their lifetime of living with social media, whether their experiences aren't part of the answer here in terms of how we begin to regulate more effectively and particularly verify most of the, the stuff that's being thrown at them and us in the social media space.
Any comments?
I can start. It's of course engaging the young generation is super critical because they will own the future. It's very interesting because I heard, by the way, a discussion at the radio where some really smart young kids from an NGO came to discuss with the radio host about global warming, and they said, for us, global warming, it's causing anxiety. It's causing anxiety because for you, the older generation, you seem like you don't care. You seem like, it's just fake news, it's everything. But my grandmother used to tell me about snow, 50 centimeters of snow in the winter, and now I see nothing. And if in 20 years this change, what will happen in 20 years when I'll be an adult with children? And this is causing us anxiety. So we don't understand the new generation. This is why we see a lot of fake news that we don't understand, because the young generation should be part of the solution. And we should help them drive this, I would say, because they will own the future. I mean, they must actually tackle with this. We failed at this, that's the truth. I mean, we failed, we let fake news grow like hell. Now we need to help them fix it because they will own it.
On that point, to my students as well, can I expose them to different types of things, explaining what the wires were, sourcing, etc. And I remember first asking them, okay, so where'd you get your news? Right? And every single person said some influencer, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. But then, if you show them other sources, if you explain to them, you have to make it just constant. You just have to involve them and constantly show them other elements, or use the platform to maybe go to someone more verified. I said, okay, probably none of you read the Financial Times here, and no one raised their hand. But then I showed them their reels, or Bloomberg, and it was kind of, again, come back to entertainment a little bit. They're like, And then by the end of the month, I said, guys, has anyone switched over to some of these others? So, oh yeah, I checked out this Bloomberg thing, that was cool. Or if someone saw an infographic off of FT or whatever. So it's also how it's packaged, right? So it's not like, oh, you guys are doing it all wrong. You have to drop social media and only read The Guardian or whatever. But it's kind of making it, it's adjusting it bit by bit. And not like saying you guys are all wrong. Of course, encouraging them into, let's say, more mainstream media if that's possible, or at least saying, okay, my only source is this guy. Let's look at other things when that guy says something. So it's, core-wise, consistent exposure, consistent sort of, let's say, repackaging of something they also like, because you can't rewire that. As you said, they've grown up with constant everything at their hands. So, but I found a promise and let's say a bit of hope in trying to show them something else that's geared on the same level to what they can adjust to. At least that's what they've told me.
I'm so sorry to shut this discussion because it's, as I said, it's incredible discussion, and I really believe that we could have an entire conference only about this. But the thing that I want to leave with you, the last thought of this, is that these are not just AI videos, someone who played online and made some funny videos. This is a national security problem at the end of the day, because through this AI, through this alternative media, through this alternative truth, they are reaching the minds of our population. They are trying to steal our freedom, our democracy, our values, and getting us without any bullet shot. Thank you so much for participating, and I think all of us are more than welcoming you to discuss further over a coffee.
Yep.